Mr. Michael, now yours turn.
Okay, I have prepared some slides, some pictures, so it's a bit more visual. If you can
Okay.
see that, just let me know.
Yes, we
Yes,
can see
yes,
that.
we can see, I think.
Okay, okay. So I will hopefully I will not keep it too long. You can see the slides, right?
Yes,
Yes. Okay. And it's about global education, right? And I like to share this because I think I'm a good example of what global education means, because I have studied in countries. I want to tell my story a little bit, and then later on, I come really to education. So, my story, this is the flag of a country where I was born. It doesn't exist nowadays. I don't know if anybody knows. Anybody knows? If you know, put it in the chat.
Is it?
If anybody knows, I can't see the
No.
chat here. Is there anything in the chat? So
Nope.
this is a flag of East Germany. So in the first 15 years, I lived in East Germany. Um, to give you a better understanding, particularly we have a lot of young people, young students here. East Germany was a communist country surrounded by a wall, by a physical wall, by a concrete wall. It was stable but strict, and you couldn't leave the country. So in the first 10 years, I never left the country because it was not allowed. And then the next few years, I only had when we went on vacation with my parents, I only could go to one country, and that was Czechoslovakia, which also doesn't exist anymore nowadays. It's Czech. Prague is the capital, right? And education, like when I went to school, as well as news media, was typical propaganda, right? So you didn't really, you learned, of course, you learned things, but you also learned things which are not always true, which was politically concerned, right? That's what many communist countries are. But there was always something which I learned from my parents. My parents instilled that in me, and I kept it till nowadays. I always, especially, I always wanted to know what's behind that wall. So, and what I had in the early days, I still have nowadays. I'm curious, and curious is an extremely important character, which I hope many of you have, or you can develop it over time, will, in many ways is the underlying reason you are interested in other things. And curious could be about your neighbors, could be about your friends, your family, or what is also beyond your village, your city, your next country. And that, and then of course you develop hobbies and interests. What's behind that wall? I wanted to get to know other countries, cultures, and other things. So what happened after the 15 years? Well, the wall, which I mentioned, was brought down by the people, and the wall in my country doesn't have to be a concrete wall. The wall can also be a boundary because of poverty, because you live in a village far away, or because of constraints of your parents or your family. So there are different walls and boundaries which can undermine you really learning more, broadening your horizon and getting to know the other side. And the other side doesn't mean you will switch to the other side, but it makes you sometimes more appreciate where you come from. Um, so after 15 years, East Germany disappeared and it got reunited with West Germany. So now it's just one country, Germany. The wall came down by the people. And when I grew up, I mean, when I finished high school, and I took the chance, I really wanted to see other countries, which I didn't have a chance in my early years. So I decided I should study in different universities. So I started in Berlin at the Humboldt University, but I also did East Anglia is in UK. And my first journey to Asia was when I did the master's. So I went to the National University of Singapore to do a master's. something at least some of you have in mind, either as a teacher, as a parent, or as a student. Why should you study overseas? So there are many different reasons, and I just share some of them here. Well, one reason is language, and it's about learning a new language or getting more proficient in a language you already know. And as Anggun, your fellow Indonesian student, just mentioned, English is becoming or has become a world language. You can study English in many different countries. You can study you can study at universities in English in countries which are not predominantly spoken in English. You can study in English in Japan. You can study in English in India, in Germany. So language is not always the issue, but it's always, I think, it's always good to learn something new. So I don't know if you can recognize any of these languages here. On the left side, it's Russian, and it's just
Awesome.
examples, right? So in the center is Hindi in India, spoken in India, and well, on the right side, it's the same alphabet. We can read it, but hablo español means do you speak Spanish? So that's something when you go overseas, even though you study in English, I think it's good to pick up a local language. It will always broaden your horizon, and it makes it much easier to make local friends and to get to know the local culture. And this is um, it's about here. Don't stay in a bubble. If you go overseas, it's very common to stay among people, among friends who have the same background, to speak the same language, who have similar experiences. I think, and many students miss out on both parts when they go overseas. Uh, um, it's and this is Angun has this. I mean, the university Angun goes. She never mentioned it, but university is unique because they move to a different country every semester. But what they do very nicely is they really get to know a different country and different cultures. And sometimes you're overseas and you got to know your culture, your own culture, much better because when you see what other people think about your own country, what perception and of misperceptions they have, right? So Indonesia is very well known. Most people only know Bali. They don't even know it's Indonesia. And I always found it very sad because Indonesia has so many nice places. I've been to Kalimantan, I've been to Sulawesi, I've been to Sumatra, many places. So misperceptions, and that's very important, and also makes you appreciate much more your own identity and your own country. And then you can compare what you like most. So what you see on a picture is the Indian festival. So the largest Indian festival. It's called Holi. Where we throw color into each other's face. It has a religious background, but essentially everybody does it wherever they come from. Uh, but of course, going overseas has more benefits. It makes you more employable. Okay. So what you get is obvious. And going overseas, I think it's important to remember it doesn't mean you have to go overseas for an entire degree, like 4 years. 4 years can be a very long time away from parents. It can be very expensive. It can be very difficult to go overseas. It could be just one semester. It could be study trips. So if you want to study overseas and you don't succeed getting a scholarship or getting admitted, there are opportunities. I used to work for the National University. I studied an NUS, international collaboration. And we have a lot of exchange programs with Indonesian universities from Surabaya, from Bandung, of course, from Jakarta universities in Bali as well. So there are opportunities going overseas. It's strange that NUS is a very good university. And whenever I talk to students before we leave, rest time, and they usually say it's the time I studied somewhere else. It's the time where I was overseas. Of NUS, as an example, students really enjoy being in a different environment. And I mean, everybody wants a job after studying, right? So, and going overseas will definitely help you. And I used to, one of my roles with university, I used to work with employers, with companies. I even worked with some Indonesian companies, like cinemas or they all mention that if a student has the chance, if a student is curious and if a student had a chance to learn things in different countries, that makes them a lot more attractive to be hired. And what you learn overseas is, of course, and I mentioned just a few things here on the slide, is intercultural communication. To deal with people from different backgrounds. It's a very important part you can learn. Um, Strange picture maybe, but it's still I still put that in here for when I talk about going overseas, because this is a very important aspect. Which was widely covered in Singapore in the media. So what you see here is a soldier who came home and the maid carried his bag.
Mm.
And why it was quite controversial is because a soldier, which is supposed to be very independent, strong, and should stand on his own feet, when he comes home, he asks the maid to carry his bag. It doesn't really or a soldier should stand for, right? You don't ask somebody else to do your job. And it also, and building the bridge to going overseas, it might be difficult at the beginning, but it builds resilience and independence. And I'm not talking getting away from family for the sake of getting away from family or parents. I'm talking about really become an adult. Learn how to cook, the simplest thing. Learn how to clean your room. Learn how to do your own grocery shopping, but also explore your neighborhood, for example, or travel around a little bit by your own or with friends. Uh, uh, of course, depending on different countries and safety, etc. But overall, it makes you more resilient and more adaptable. Which once you leave you leave university and you start a job somewhere, this is what often happens. You have a new environment and you need to find your own way. And I think studying overseas, going overseas, or just talking to people who have different experiences, that fosters that idea that at the end of the day, standing on your own feet. Okay, and that is the end of my journey, and that's today. That's my wife and me on a trip to Sri Lanka on holidays. So my wife is Singaporean. She's originally from India. If you have any questions, I will put my email address in the chat. You can approach me anytime. And but if you have any questions right now, I'm very happy to answer it.
Thanks. Okay, Michael. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, I think you have still 4 to 5 minutes to continue your slide, please.
Okay, I mean, I don't have more slides, but I
Mm.
can share a couple of things. What I think is important when teachers, parents, or students or global education, and that is uh, um, there is, I would say, for me, an overly strong interest to study in Western countries. and I say that because I'm from a Western country. So, and I also say that, and I worked for an American college before. While it's useful and good, do not forget also your there are very good universities in Asia is number one. I mean, Singapore, but also in Malaysia, very good universities, or Japan, or Thailand, or Korea. So don't exclude them from your list to go on a study tour or to have some kind of exchange or study there. And then in all these countries, you can study English unless you speak the local language. And also, uh, uh, many Indian economy or Indian companies, they're closely integrated with ASEAN, for example. And Indonesia is seen as or is already an economic tiger in the region. There are many companies Indonesian companies who work in Singapore and beyond. So that is really appreciated if you have an experience, not only US or UK, but also here in Asia. Because if you're interested also maybe to work overseas at least for some time, this is where usually would be the first step. It's closer to home. It's easier food wise. I can promise you this one. And it is Indonesian companies or also multinationals who are based in Indonesia, they would love to have an Indonesian who has experience in the region and maybe come back to Indonesia after some time and then take up a management role. So keep that in mind when you make your decision to go overseas. Don't forget your backyard. Don't forget ASEAN or the Chinese region.
Oh,
Yeah, I think this is just one to add on.
yay! That's so good, Michael.
Thank you.
Oke, peserta global webinar yang berbahagia, di sini sangat hujan cukup deras, membuat suasana cukup lumayan redup. Tapi insya Allah tetap semangat ya. Tadi Mr. Michael mengawali cerita slide-nya dengan menceritakan ke bagian dari sejarah beliau, di mana beliau tinggal 15 tahun di Jerman, di mana kita tahu semua bahwa Jerman merupakan salah satu negara yang cukup bagus dalam sendi pendidikannya. Kemudian juga beliau menyampaikan tadi belajarnya di 3 negara, di UK, di USA, di kampus apa tadi Berlin kemudian di Angelia masih di USA, dan satu lagi di National University of Singapore. Jadi dari sisi pendidikan, global education-nya beliau cukup memaklumi dan memahami banget. Lalu beliau juga menyampaikan betapa pentingnya studi overseas itu, karena tadi dia mengaitkan dengan contohnya Kak Anggun, karena ternyata pendidikan di luar negeri minimal ada 2 hal yang bisa kita pelajari. Pertama tentang independensi, dan yang kedua tentang selain confidence juga tentang ketangguhan atau resilience. Independen dan ketangguhan itu merupakan modal penting untuk kita bisa pergi ke luar negeri. Nah, dia tadi menyampaikan satu foto yang sangat unik menurut dia ketika ada seorang army yang pulang ke rumah, lalu tasnya tuh dibawa oleh seorang army itu independen, kemudian tangguh, kuat, tidak perlu memberikan tasnya kepada pembantunya. Nah, beliau juga menyampaikan bahwa emang sekolah ke luar negeri atau overseas itu tidak mudah, sulit, tetapi bisa dilakukan dan juga memberikan kesempatan, karenanya beliau sangat memotivasi kita semua untuk bisa menyekolahkan putra-putri kita kalau bisa ya ke luar negeri. Itu diantaranya hal-hal yang bisa saya catat sebagai highlight. Mungkin nanti di sini ya, yang insya Allah menjadi pembicara kedua, yang kebetulan juga beliau lama di Korea, kuliah di Korea, dan tahu banget tentang kehidupan Korea, akan berbagi tentang pendidikan di sana. Namun sebelum ke pembicara kedua, kita membuka we will open the feedback, Michael, from the audience, from the participants.
Of course.
Yes, for the feedback, question and answer, boleh di text di chat.
May I ask something?
Oke, silakan. Sebutkan nama dan kota aja deh. Nama dan kota aja.
Hello. Hello. Let me introduce. My name is Evin. I'm a mom, and my son study in Jagat Ars. So I just want to ask you a question. But before I ask you a question, I totally agree with what you just present about study abroad, because it will open our mindset and also build a character for our children as well. I was working for a multinational company, and also and I do believe that by having that some experience makes us more, getting to know about the way they think, the way they do or make a strategy about anything. And I think we can learn much about that, and learn from different perspectives and make us more open-minded. But then my question is, how about the opportunity? I mean, the communication, because any opportunity to make our children having a chance study abroad, but sometimes the challenge is about the communication itself. I mean, the program, and then what will how our children can have the opportunity itself, and then what kind of how long is the program, because it's also important that maybe they have like a matriculation or like a transition period, because so many different culture, especially we are in Asian. And then if we want to make our children have a school in European, for example, it's totally different culture. So is there any program, or is there any I don't know, it's like a facility maybe that can make our children easier to have that transition, and it's more easier for them to adapt with the new situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Ivin. Your English is so good.
Mama Emir.
Jadi malu nih kita, bahasa Inggris kita
I'm
tidak sebagus Ibu.
I'm Bunda Emir.
Oh my God,
Saya Bunda Emir,
Oke, welcome
Miss.
Bunda Emir. Oke, tadi Ibu,
Thank you.
yes, tadi Ibu bertanya, saya highlight aja tentang bagaimana melanjutkan komunikasi antara Mr. Michael dengan kita, khususnya yang ada di Indonesia. Mungkin nanti link-linknya bisa di-share, mungkin bisa nanti. Yang kemudian juga mungkin boleh nanti memberikan sedikit detail program yang berkaitan dengan program ke sana, atau persiapan untuk menghindari culture shock bagi anak-anak kita, memfasilitasi itu. Please, Mr. Michael, your time.
Thank you for your question. You're like an English teacher. Okay, that's how your English is.
Thank you.
It's a very big question, right? And I don't have the answer for all the different opportunities you can have to get accustomed or culturally settled overseas, or where you get the first step. There are various regional youth organizations, and I will put my email later in, and I can it probably gets too long and too deep here. There are many youth organizations focused on either Indonesia and the rest of Asia, or there is some ASEAN related youth organizations. They organize all kinds of different expeditions, then meetups in different cities and countries, where you get an idea just to work with other people from other nationalities and backgrounds and religions, right? So that would be a start. And I would say these are very established organizations. Sometimes they fund also, but you don't necessarily need to go overseas for right away to get an idea how does the world look outside. You can just talk to people as we talk here, and I'm sure Indonesia has other opportunities to meet also people in person. But this is number one. Secondly, most, and I'm referring in Netherlands, US, or Germany, as far as education is concerned, all of them have um, government agencies, and they promote and facilitate um, youth exchange as well as educational opportunities. And for example, US has Education USA. UK has British Council. Germany is something called DAAD. So these are all organizations, and all of them have an office in Jakarta. I'm sure about this one. They run events. They invite speakers. They share with you what opportunities you have to do a language course overseas, to do an exchange, to do full study or overseas, and also how do you? They have information what's different, what are the most important differences between Indonesia and Germany in terms of behavior, food preferences, and stuff like that. And it's good to have that. So these organizations will help you. And as more you can meet them in person, and again, Jakarta, I don't know other cities in Indonesia, but definitely in the capital, they will help facilitate that exchange. I hope that answers a little bit, and I will drop my email later in the chat. And if you want to know more, I'm happy to chat with you separately.
Okay, thank you. But then, my last question: how about this current situation? I mean, with this pandemic, is there any impact? Because yes, I know that before there are so many events that we can just come in and then get all the information. But lately, I just feel, or maybe it's just because myself, I'm not really get that kind of information. I mean, compared to before pandemic. And so, is there any different with the program, and also how about the pandemic itself for the coming next 2 or 3 years? I mean, is it limited our children to go different treatment or whatever? I don't know. Maybe you can explain more to us. Thank you.
If I can predict the future, I will play lottery and I would be a millionaire. Okay.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows how long the pandemic is going to last? Nobody knows. But I think everybody knows the impact will be at least for this year. And in terms of physical travel to study overseas, or for people coming to Indonesia, or events, that will be severely impacted. So the opportunities will be, I wouldn't say zero, but are very limited. And we are currently in a public health emergency. The last pandemic we had 100 years ago. So it's very unusual days. It's very unusual
Yes.
times, and it's not positive, but we have to go through this. Many things happen virtually. I mean, what we do is a virtual exchange of ideas. I learn from you, you learn from me. I like virtual, but for me, nothing can replace a physical or a face-to-face exchange or going to another country. It cannot replace that, right? But it's better than nothing. But as far as so many of these youth organizations, we have expedition and youth conferences, is not happening right now. Is not happening. It might happen in some countries, but it's only for people who are in that country.
Okay, Mr. Michael.
That's it.
Ibu Vivian, thank you for questions. Thank you for the answering, Mr. Michael. Because of the time,
Yeah.
kita beri satu kesempatan penanya dulu untuk ini, and we are going to continue for the next speaker actually, due to the time that we have very limited.